People's Democratic Party in Osun State have won the state's 3 senatorial and 9 House of Representatives seats. Senate spokesman Ajibola Bashiru lost to Fadeyi Olubi of the PDP in Osun Central Senatorial District. Senator Francis Fadaunsi of the PDP was re-elected for Osun East Senatorial District, defeating Ajibola Famurewa of the APC. Adams Oshiomhole, former national chair of the All Progressives Congress APC, has been elected to represent Edo North Senatorial District at the National Assembly. Oshiomhole was declared the winner by Benjamin Adeshino, Independent National Electoral Commission INEC returning officer, on Sunday. The APC chieftain polled 107,110 votes to defeat Francis Alimi Kehana of the People's Democratic Party PDP, the incumbent, who scored 55,344 votes. The former APC national chair had earlier defeated Alimi Kehana in the APC primary for the senatorial seat before the latter resigned from the party to join PDP. Oshiomhole joined the senatorial race in May 2022 after he had declared his intention to contest the 2023 presidential election on the platform of the APC. Also, Femi Gbajabiamila, Speaker of the House of Representatives, has won re-election for his 6th term in office. Gbajabiamila, who has spent 20 years in the lower chamber of the National Assembly, defeated Bosun Jeje of the People's Democratic Party in the Surulere 1 federal constituency election. Gbajabiamila polled 19,717 votes to defeat the PDP candidate, who scored 5,121 votes. Gbajabiamila was first elected to the House of Representatives in 2003 and had won 5 straight elections before now. The Speaker has previously served as Minority Whip, Minority Leader, Opposition Leader, and Majority Leader before getting elected as Speaker in 2019. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has declared Mr. Thaddeus Atta of the Labour Party as the winner of the Etiosa federal constituency seat in the House of Representatives. Professor Fumilayo Dukoya, who was the INEC returning officer, made the declaration on Sunday at the Collation Center, Lagos State Model Nursery and Primary School, Mara Lekki 1. Atta won with 24,075 votes, beating his counterpart, Mr. Olubankole Wellington, popularly called Banky W, of the People's Democratic Party PDP, who had 18,666 votes, and Mr. Babajide Obanikoro of the APC, who had 16,901 votes. Well, these are the results coming in so far from Nigeria Decides 2023 election 2023 from the presidential and the Senate and Federal House of Representatives elections. We have Mr. Emmanuel Feni, our correspondent, or not correspondent, our analyst. Well, you wear many hats, Mr. Feni, so sometimes
correspondent is not one of them.
It's not one of them. But our analyst, our Oga, our deputy editor.
More than enough for you.
Mr. Feni, sir, you're most welcome.
Yes. Called an analyst. It means you have something to say. Yes. Rather than just parroting nothing.
Absolutely.
Say something.
I mean, he's been with us all weekend and directing things behind the scene and also in front of the cameras. Also, it's good to see you this morning, looking bright despite the very hard work put in over the weekend. But your thoughts and comments on the results gotten so far?
Well, the results are pouring in. The candidates are still waiting with, I'm sure they will have inkling as to the direction the results is heading right now. Of course, we saw the Ekiti result where the candidate of the APC expectedly won Ekiti, hands down as it were. But interestingly, which other candidates we'll be looking at in all the results is that the PDP candidate, Atiku Abubakar, was able to score the necessary 25%. So you say that one in a box for Atiku Abubakar. And going forward, of course, the results, apart from whoever wins each state, whether any of the candidates polled, the other candidates polled as much as 25%, will be of interest. Of course, in the light of Section 134 of the Constitution as to the requirement for winning the presidential election, majority vote, and of course you must have the necessary spread, 25% of the votes in at least 24 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. So that would be of interest. Then the Ekiti, the Osun election, the results that have come out so far, quite, you say, interesting, because Ademola Adeleke, the governor of Osun State, who happens to be the leader of the PDP in the Southwest, you will say has delivered. And the clean sweep of all the senatorial and House of Representatives seats was not expected. I thought at least APC would make some showing there, being the second state, or the first state, if you wish, of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So because the immediate past governor happens to be his blood relation, and so he has more than passing relation to that state. Unfortunately, as we have seen, PDP swept all the seats in the National Assembly poll in that state. So other states will be, especially in the Southwest, will be of real interest, not only to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who, of course, the Southwest happens to be his stronghold, but how other parties can pick that 25% in each of the Southwest states, because it's quite, you must have the spread. And but looking at the election generally, which we've been monitoring here throughout the weekend, of course, I want to join you in saluting the Nigerian people for their resilience in ensuring that their votes count. Yes, we've had a lot of hiccups here and there, enough to discourage the lily-livered if you are not really resolute in casting your vote. But the average Nigerian voter stood tall, even when it was nightfall. Some people brought generator to ensure that the process continued. In a place like Magodo, the election continued throughout the night into the morning yesterday, and the people were there. They were ready. Of course, in other places, elections could not hold on election day, in places like Warri and some parts of Delta State, Warri South local government specifically, which was quite surprising because the distribution center is just in the center of the town. Warri is not a very big town, so you wonder what kind of logistic problem will warrant a situation where INEC officials couldn't get to the polling stations on that day, to the extent that the following day, Sunday, it took up to 2 p.m. for election materials to arrive with election officials. But they eventually voted because folks were calling me that, well, at least we vote. Warri they carry last as they are. At last Warri vote. Yes. So Warri they carry last.
They were resilient.
They were resilient. And we saw that across the country. But the security situation, because the idea of security agents throwing their hands up in the air, what can we do? In the face of obvious thuggery, I think is something that is worrisome. Because in Lagos, we had thugs moving around with guns to disrupt the polling in some areas. In Mafuluku, they successfully burnt down all INEC materials in that station. I don't know what happened to those voters. Of course, in Okota, yes, there was no violence. But what happened there is clear case of voter suppression. Because in a polling unit, which one of our correspondents covered, we had in a polling you have 1,200 over. Only 200 people ended up voting. So when you see that Lagos votes, despite the huge number on the voters register, over 6 million, at the end of the day, I'm not sure, going by the figures that are coming out, I'm not sure we will make 2 million votes in Lagos.
Less than
so
30%.
There is this attempt to suppress Lagos vote. So I don't know who it will hurt at the end of the day, but the number of voters on the register and those who actually get to vote, the disparity is too much. So something has to be done, because Lagos cannot be boasting to be, we have the largest voters, but on election day, something will happen. Yeah. And part of what is the problem is thuggery, suppression of votes. Deliberate, you will say, because I don't see how INEC will send materials that are not enough to a polling unit that has so much voters on the register. So it's something that going forward, INEC has to deal with the issue of logistics, because in this age and time, to move materials from just one point to the other, INEC will be talking about logistic problem. And it is more worrisome that it is happening in one part of the country, but in another part of the country, everything just worked seamlessly.
Well, Fini, let me respond to some of the issues you raised. I think it was Husseini that made the point earlier on that there's likely to be a lot of litigation after this election. And that's a fact. We're likely to have that because a lot will be contested at the court. Some people had hoped that this would not happen, but given the glitches, to use an expression in paragraph 2 of the statement issued by Festus Okoye of INEC, too many glitches in this last conducted elections on February 25. But with regard to the presidential election, what we should hope for is that there will be an outright winner, and that whoever wins will be accepted by the other major gladiators, and that there will be no battle in the courts. But if there is a battle in the courts, it may well be that one of the contentious issues will be Section 134,
yes,
which you referred to. Now, Section 134 is ambiguous, and some lawyers have pointed this out.
I think the directors can put that up.
SAN,
we have that.
And also Wudu, SAN, who was on this same Nigeria Decides 2023 yesterday. And the issue is, what is the exact interpretation of that Section 134, particularly the reference to winning a quarter of the votes in 2/3 of the states of the Federation? Some people have been saying we have 36 states. But if you place that provision in Section 134 against Section 299 of the Constitution, Section 299 says that the Federal Capital Territory shall be treated as if it were a state of the Federation, without prejudice to other provisions of the Constitution. So 2/3 of what? 2/3 of 36 or 2/3 of 37. But we hope that that may not become a constitutional issue. But at least two senior advocates of Nigeria have drawn attention to it. I think what they've done is to draw attention to a possibility, or to prepare the grounds for likely litigation in terms of that interpretation. But if there is an outright winner, and there is no dispute at the presidential level, well, that will be fine. Number 2, you talked about Ekiti. And I said earlier before you joined us that if you look at the pattern, it's like everybody wants to hold on to his stronghold. If you check how the parties have been reporting the news, Dino Melaye delivers his local government. Oshiomhole has won his local government, and all of that. So each politician trying to prove that they're strong in their particular areas. Now, in the case of Ekiti, it's an APC government that is there, Governor Oyebamiji. Now, of course, I made a point earlier on about self-validation. So the APC in Ekiti State will have put a lot of work into the task to validate the fact that the APC won the gubernatorial election, which was one of the off-cycle elections, prefacing this general election. If you go to Osun Ademola Adeleke was declared winner in July 2022 in the election in that state. In January 2022, the tribunal took the victory away from him and awarded it to the APC candidate. And now he has delivered, let us say, so to speak, as leader of the APC, of the PDP in the state. He has delivered that state by 11,000 margin to the PDP, the Atiku, presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, and has taken all the seats, House of Reps and Senate. And that is why the Adeleke camp has been boasting that this is a validation of the fact that the PDP indeed won the governorship election. I don't know why you were referring to Osun as a presidential candidate of the APC's second state. What we know is that he's from Lagos State, and he's from Ikeja local government area of Lagos State, where he was beaten by the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, and where he was beaten in 7 local governments from all the results so far, raising the question of who indeed owns Lagos politically. After all, you cited the example of Thaddeus Atta,
yes,
also known as Atta Chief in Etiosa local government.
But Ruben, using that word, who owns Lagos, in relation to
politically,
no, you have to qualify it, because you may just
no man's land.
No, because you may just create another tension.
No, I have not said Lagos is no man's land.
I said politically. No, you have to add that, because who owns Lagos? Don't forget that some people also refer to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Jagaban of Bogu, Asiwaju of Lagos, the owner of Lagos. So
Lagos is, so as of today, Lagos is no man's land politically.
No, well,
I don't want us to talk of ownership.
The indigenous will not agree
yes,
that Lagos is a no man's land. That's another argument.
Even
I said politically. If you heard me just I said politically as of today.
No, but Ruben, I even quarrel with the word ownership by virtue of victory. Let's just restrict it to, yes, Labour Party has won in Lagos in as many local governments, which means Labour Party is strong in Lagos.
Yes, okay.
Yes, let's leave ownership out of this matter.
Of course, political ownership, which is being contested, not about ethnicity or indigeneity. Now, if you look at Ogun State, where the APC is, in power, the results that have been declared so far indicate that the presidential candidate of the APC has won in about 17 local governments. Okay? Now, the governor is APC. In a sense, you say that the governor has delivered. So in those states where the governors are running for a second term, it is in their own best self-interest to make sure that, they hold down their states, even if they are not the candidates, they were not the candidates in the February 25 election. But they are aware that on March 11, there will be another election.
But in these 2 states, there are other factors.
Of course.
In Ekiti, the PDP has been perpetually at war against itself.
That is correct.
In Ogun State, since 2019, PDP have been fighting themselves into this. So there's no coherence. So it's like the PDP has been weakened in both states. So not necessarily because the incumbent is just APC. That's why you have that kind of landslide.
Well, after all, in analysis, there's nothing called single factor analysis. It's only uneducated people who take one position and they say that is the only position. So there are many factors.
Yes, so I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah,
I just wanted to jump into the conversation by saying, very spot on, what you said as regards the incumbents, especially when there's back and forth as regards their elections, trying to assert their incumbency in those states. And you mentioned Osun, which is really very, very important. And it's true you said that. Because if you remember, I think it was many election cycles ago, the elections that had Nuhu Ribadu as presidential candidate. You remember that Aregbesola decided strongly that he was going to work so hard at ensuring that the ACN then, with Nuhu Ribadu, won Osun. Because, he had just gone through the contest with Oyinlola as regards court, and he just come in there and he wanted to reassert his authority. And if you look at in that election cycle, it was only Osun State that Nuhu Ribadu and Fola Adeola then did win. So they always try as much as possible to put their hands on those states and put a firm run on those states. But also, another thing about the election map in the Southwest that is changing. Look at Oyo, for instance. Despite the incumbent PDP governor, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has won more states in Oyo, and is looking as though he's going to, be able to nick Oyo and take Oyo when you look at the results that are just already coming in from Oyo State. So that's to also show you that, yes, you might say...
Is there no G5 input?
Yeah, you might say the G5
G5 input.
You might say the G5 input, you might say anything, as regards that. But it also shows that it goes back to the grand analysis as regards people taking their strongholds. A lot of people expect that Tinubu definitely will do very good in the Southwest. And that's why people are shocked at Lagos, because, the biggest shocker in this elections thus far has been Lagos, And it's so palpable that the Labour Party keeps shouting that, hey, you guys said we don't have structure, that you had the structure at which you won, elections in Lagos all this while. But look at what we've been able to do despite the suppression, despite accusations. Take, for instance, Badagry local government. When they read out the results, the Labour Party representative of the coalition, that's the party chairman, Pastor Dayo, came out to say that those results were pretty much read at gunpoint. And she has challenged most of the results. In fact, there was another local government she called for cancellation. And despite all of that, the margin is still neck and neck. I hear with the 18 local government coming in now, remaining 2 to go, it's just about a 10,000 vote difference between the APC leading Labour now as regards that. So that's to speak, and that speaks volumes about a party that if you look at the last election cycle, I'm not sure Labour got up to how many thousand votes in Lagos. They didn't even feature prominently, but all of a sudden. And that has also weakened the chances of the PDP. Because I doubt PDP is going to get 25% in Lagos. I'm not sure they're going to smell anything close to 25% in Lagos. And once you also see that too, across the other states, you are seeing that resurgence. You're seeing that outlying effect. I was checking out a couple of results from local government areas, and I was seeing Labour in Taraba. Labour was making a good showing in Taraba. We talked about, Kaure,
yes.
Kaduna, that Labour Party, won an House of Rep, a federal seat. So you are seeing those big showing. Akwa Ibom, that is supposed to be an out-and-out, PDP state, when you look at it, tipping the balance, you are seeing Labour Party coming second or coming third in some local governments, PDP coming first, and Labour Party breaking the trajectory of the margin the PDP will normally have. So definitely one thing is certain. The electoral map of Nigeria is changing.
It will never be the same.
It will never be the same. And that's why you see, for all the Nigerians that feel disgruntled and say, oh, my votes do not count, you are the true heroes of these elections. And I keep saying that because with all the voter suppression, with all the voter apathy, with the voter suppression the politicians caused, your voices are still being heard. You are changing the electoral map of Nigeria forever. And now, like a shark, you have smelt blood. And even if things don't pan out the way you wanted, the next election cycle, you know that with a mass mobilization, a lot can be done. And that's why I said before, I'm a student of great history. I know there are worries, ethnically I inclined to Lagos. And all of that. So I will not say Lagos is no more, but Lagos is no man's land politically today as we speak. Because the hitherto strongholds have been booked. Look at Oshodi, for instance.
Look at Etiosa.
Look at Etiosa.
The APC candidate didn't come second.
It came third. Look at Oshodi, for instance. Look at
Koshofe.
Look at Koshofe.
Let
me even shock you, Dr. Abati. Look at the certainty at Koshofe. I remember it was on this show that your Israel was here, supporting this party and all. And somebody sent you a message. National youth leader, and you read it out, and they said they are going to beat you in Koshofe. They are already mobilizing, but and true to type, the Labour Party beat APC in Koshofe. And when you look at the last electoral map, these are probably APC strongholds. Yes. And these are places where they do well. Yes. But the electoral map definitely has changed.
Absolutely.
And you see, the governorship election, oh my goodness.
That's
that's going to be another big fight.
Another factor would seem to be religion. Because if you look at Southern Kaduna, all the votes in Southern Kaduna went the way of Labour Party.
Yes.
And the simple explanation for that will probably be religion.
Yes.
Parts of Plateau State, Labour Party also made up a strong showing there. So you find identity politics, you find religion being a major factor in this election.
And don't forget that the leader of ECWA, Evangelical Church Winning for All, as they are now known, they have wide tentacles in the north. especially in places like Kaduna, Plateau. And the leader of that Christian organization did say that at the appropriate time they will give instruction to their adherents as to who they will vote for. So whether he actually did, who he told them to vote for, I wouldn't know. But just to restate the fact that religious leaders in some parts of the country were not apolitical, as it were. They took a stand. And whether that's what we're seeing in the north areas where Labour has triumphed remains to be seen. In the days ahead, we'll be analyzing further the impact of Labour, Peter Obi, the influence, the energy Peter Obi brought, how he was attracted to the youth. Because I wonder if Peter Obi was in the PDP, whether he will attract this kind of followership from the youth population. But coming out of the PDP, they saw him as somebody different.
Yes.
Suddenly, he became a different person, not one of them. And his alignment with Labour also, because if you had gone to some other party, whether he would have garnered that kind of traction. Recall that Atedo Peterside, the ANAP Foundation founder, did everything to woo him to SDP. And on the eve of his making the decision, in fact, Atedo Peterside was almost sure that Peter Obi was coming to SDP, but he chose Labour.
Anyway,
Labour and the workers.
Yeah. When we talk about identity,
yes,
identity is a cover for ethnicity, also for religion, because people can identify either as members of an ethnic group or they can identify as members of a religious group. And these primordial sentiments, are very strong.
Yes.
So it would be wrong for anybody to imagine. That would not be
be a factor.
An educated thing to say that ethnicity was not a factor or that religion was not a factor, because people think first also about their identity. And in parts of the country, some of those votes that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu probably got in certain parts of Yoruba land or Southwest, it's also about the identity, the politics of proximity.
Yeah.
The people who think that if somebody is close to you, you go to the same church or you go to the same mosque or you speak the same language, then you must vote. Take the whole of the Southeast. Nobody could outperform from the results we have seen so far, Peter Obi in the Southeast, despite the protestations of certain elites from that part of the country. But Emmanuel Efele, based on your earlier analysis of large voters turnout,
yes,
you've been quoted as talking about that, and INEC's lack of preparedness,
yes,
for large polling units. Let's take this report from our producer, Ozzy Okole, who became a correspondent during this election. I saw him covering Amuwodofin.
He is a correspondent, actually, and he's also a producer.
Yes, I saw him covering Amuwodofin and Okota areas of Lagos State on Saturday. Let's see what this thespian has for us.
The coverage of the 2023 presidential and national assembly elections in Amuwodofin and Okota areas of Lagos State was violence-free with hiccups from the very few independent National Electoral Commission officials arriving polling units very late. In Festac, Amuwodofin local government area, the polling unit of the All Progressives Congress organizing secretary for Lagos State chapter, Ayo Adewale, was very peaceful, with the electorate obeying all rules of engagement. However, the case was quite different in Okota area of Agor Palace Way, under Isolo Local Council Development Area. At polling unit 023, Ward 8, located at Babaiwe Junction in Okota, which was regarded as the largest polling unit in Okota, the very few INEC staff deployed were overwhelmed by the large turnout of voters, coupled with the functioning of just one bimodal voters accreditation system machine, BVAS.
There are so many challenges. We came out early. By 8 a.m. we already gathered here. We had to wait for INEC officials and the materials to arrive. Unfortunately, they didn't come. I was sending situation reports to the situation room. By 10:35, the canopy was installed, the INEC officials arrived, then accreditation started around 11. But there were so many other challenges. One of them is that they came without stamp. Secondly, there was no ink and pad. I personally had to call a bookseller who now supplied inks and pad. I had to supply ink and pad to 023, 084, Greenfield and Star Times, because there were, I don't know whether it was intentional or it was a mistake on their part not to come with pads. They were rubbing pen on the tips of the index finger, and it was not good because the images, the stamp, the voting was blurred, so I had to go and get stamp.
The number of people here is very big. My number is 814. Why they are still in 200 and they don't come with stamp. They just go and borrow stamp from people that just finished. 1 unit, 1 stamp for all these people. People are tired, they didn't even come with stamp. Please, INEC should do some this.
Okay, hold on. Do you think it's deliberate?
Why I think it's deliberate. They just do it. Why would they come here without stamp? And they came late. We've been here since 6 o'clock. What time? Look at crowd here. Last election, this is where the violence starts. They should please help us.
Okay, you mean last election in 2019?
Yes. This is where the violence starts. Last election, the other helicopter is roving here. There's no security men here, and we are patient. We don't want violence. They should help us. They don't have to frustrate us. It's bad. And there's no violence. There's no security personnel, and we come down. We are on the sun.
Okay, but for this 2023 election, there is no violence so far, and security men are on ground compared to last year. Yeah. So we need to establish that.
Yes, security men, the soldiers have come here. We have complained. They said they must finish the election. They must finish it. Now look at the crowd here. Let them help us.
This morning the materials were not enough, so we are short of materials. That's the first thing. We had to wait for over 2 hours. Then after 2 hours, we had to come up here to set up. We came around after 11, so the voting started late. And they have about 1,896 voters that are to vote here. And aside that, we're supposed to be 4 here, but we have just 2 people here. So imagine the 2 of us controlling this crowd. I'm the one handling the 2 pivots and everything. So the challenges, we also have the INEC stamp challenges. We were able to receive the stamp this morning. So we had to go and borrow from another polling unit that are done with their voting. So the voting is in process now. Okay, so I just pray we finish on time because a lot of people has not voted.
Okay, so I need to let you go so that you concentrate on what you're doing. But before I let you go, how will the time be augmented? Because we heard that by 2:30 voting is supposed to stop. Will there be an extension here based on the present situation of things?
Yes, there should be an extension because we came late. So there should be an additional hours of like maybe 2 hours, maybe by 4, so we can give enough people to vote because it's their right. People must vote, so there will be an extension.
Okay, so is there any attempt to bring in more INEC officials to come and help you?
Yes. We've made contact of some of our people that they are done with their votes. So by the time they count their vote, they've done the necessary thing, then they'll come and join us.
Elsewhere at the same Okota in Agor Palace Way, voters complained of INEC officials providing them with a different ballot papers of another local government area.
First of all, I want to say that this process since it started has been relatively peaceful. There is no form of violence going on here, but we have some issues that are not going on as we initially planned. The first on the list is that the INEC officers came late. They came around some minutes past 10. And voting started around 10 minutes past 11. So, and when we started voting, we discovered that the House of Rep ballot paper they brought here is for Mushin 1 instead of Oshodi Isolo 2. Secondly, the ballot paper for Senate there's no Labour Party logo on it. Then thirdly, they came here with only one beavers machine, and it is delaying the process. And then one of the INEC officers is the one tearing the ballot paper. She is the one signing, and she is the one stamping. This thing is delaying the process. So it's only one person. So the officers they brought here are not sufficient enough to do this voting process.
At another polling unit, the scenario became an agitation. Voters insisted that INEC officials must upload results before leaving the polling units, despite the complaint by INEC officials that network failure is being experienced.
I was the first person to cast my vote, and before 2 were all done. And of course, to keep in terms with INEC's guidelines, we waited till 2:30 for the results to be counted, and then for us to verify that it was okay. And since then, we've been waiting for the upload of the results. Well, we waited a bit, and there were some agitations here and there. People were very upset, angry over the whole situation. And after we had intervened and people have tried to achieve some calm, they were able to upload the National Assembly results. But unfortunately, it is still quite surprising, and we are still asking questions why that should go through and the presidential results are yet to be uploaded. Because those who have cast their votes here have vowed that the officials will not leave this polling unit until the results are uploaded to the site, which is the requirement, and that is what it should be. So, and we're wondering why of all the results, the presidential elections, the results are not being uploaded. So we are asking questions, please, what is going on? You understand? And we are waiting. We are here. We mean business. We are going nowhere. And for the sake of these INEC officials who we are feeling for, we need these sites to come up, to open, and allow them upload these results so we can return back to our homes. We mean for a peaceful and fair election. That's what we stand for.
As the day started to turn to night, Okota's largest polling unit took a new twist. Voting was cut short by INEC officials who started counting the almost 200 votes that was turned in. And almost 700 accredited voters in the largest polling unit of Okota were not allowed to cast their votes.
Here's my polling unit. I came to vote today, and when we came here, at first we took numbers. I was number 609. We waited, and the INEC officials came here by past 11. Coming here at past 11, they started arranging things. Although things were arranged for them to come to set up and everything. I went back and I came back to vote, to cast my vote. Reaching here, I found out that only one BVAS was working out of 2 BVAS, and having to vote with only one BVAS with a crowd. We have this is one of the largest polling units here. I remember in 2019 we were disenfranchised here because people came to scuttle our votes, scuttle the ballot boxes, Coming back here today, I came to vote. I thought I'd be able to vote today. Coming here, we found out that we had only one BVS, so we could not vote. Out of 1,000, over 1,200 people came here. 1,238 to be precise, and less than 250 people voted. The BVS machines were very, very slow. The INEC officials came here very late, and of course, the officials are very, very, very few. The police officials here, they didn't try to coordinate things. They just were very, very lackadaisical, They tried, but they were lackadaisical, because I remember going to tell them to help arrange us, but it didn't happen like that. At 6 p.m., the army officials told us to stop because they probably had got intelligence that this place was going to be scuttled anytime soon. So over 800, over 8,000 people didn't vote. Look at them, that's evidence. Look at them, that's evidence. Over 8,000 people didn't vote. I didn't get to vote. Some members of my family didn't get to vote, although some members voted, but some other members didn't get to vote. That's total disenfranchisement. We hope that the gubernatorial elections will be better, fairer, and we have more BVAS machines and more members of staff of INEC. You couldn't have brought only 2 people for as many electorates. We've got over 1,238 people, and less than 250 people voted today. Less than 250 people voted today. You came late, aside coming late, you didn't start on time. Aside this, you came only two, and out of the 2 BVA machines, only one was working. That's totally unacceptable. I feel totally disenfranchised. But well, it's better than 2019. At least we've got results. In 2019, we didn't have any result from this place. On top of everything, we didn't have ink. Somebody had to volunteer to buy ink. I thought there was a kind of small mock exercise where people, especially the presiding officers, knew exactly what was supposed to be brought to the polling units. They came here without any ink, any stamp ink, or anything at all. They only came here with only they only came out with marker to mark our fingers and the papers. They didn't come with ink or stamp. We had to get that by ourselves. So over 8,000 people feel disenfranchised. We hope that moving forward in subsequent elections, we'll have more PUs, we'll have more polling units, we'll have more polling units. I go to let me read it out. My polling unit is 24-18-09-0023. I hope we'll have more polling units.
With the huge complaint of voters not being able to cast their votes, Nigerians are hoping that the final output of results will truly reflect the mandate of the electorates. Ozio Koli, Arise News, Lagos.
Well, Ozio Koli there, Arise News correspondent reporting from the polling stations. But Emmanuel Efeni, one issue here is about voter turnout. In the 2019 election, in the 2011 election, voter turnout was about 44-something%. In 2019, it came down to about 35-something%, maybe 35.6%. And it's been going down. It was up in 1999, over 58% or so. It came down in 2003. It went up in between. But since about 2011, it's been going down. Now, but when you talk about major turnout, the issue here was that nationwide? Because there were many polling units where some people didn't come out, where some people were frustrated, they were disenfranchised by INEC's failure of infrastructure and logistics. I hope that at the end of the day, when the proper statistics is given, we will not have a situation whereby this election will be the worst in terms of turnout. Not because the people were not willing, but because they were just not able to access the system. And that would be most unfortunate in an election that is best described as perhaps the most competitive since the 1999 general election. So I guess when we talk about large turnout, maybe we should wait for the data at the end of the day instead of just looking at the crowd. Because yes, in many places, people turned out, people slept at polling units, but they had to go home frustrated. And I guess that's one thing we still need to address in this country, whereby we must have a seamless system that will not, prevent people from voting. In fact, in some places, some former leaders of this country, we were told, could not vote because beavers failed.
Well, Ruben, you see the enthusiasm was clearly there. Even before election day, we knew that many Nigerians were ready to cast their vote on that day, going by the zeal with which people were looking for their PVCs. And of course, denying people the right to vote started with denial of receiving their PVCs. Many persons had their PVCs ready in INEC offices, but due to INEC's logistic problem again, many people could not collect their PVCs. Over 6 million PVCs were uncollected, not because many of those people did not want to collect, but they just couldn't do so within the time frame.
No, point of correction. INEC's position is that 87.2 persons collected PVCs.
Yes.
And they've refused to shift. Victor Aluko, the director in charge of voter education, was on the morning show. And he kept insisting that 87.2 persons collected PVCs. And we were reminding him, what of the PVCs that a hunter found in the bush, in Inewe North, in Anambra? What of the ones that were found in drainage channels? What of the ones that were found in the hands of foreigners before the election?
So clearly, there was enthusiasm even at that point, which gave the indication that Nigerians were looking forward to this election. More competitive than in previous years, obviously, with the strong showing of the four frontline candidates, as we term them in the media, that these are the frontline candidates. And of course, the results also clearly we have seen so far point to the fact that these were indeed the front runners in the race. But what happened on election day, that people came to the polling stations and were waiting for INEC. If you remember how many times the INEC chairman said, "We are ready. We are ready." But what transpired on election day did not show that all the I's were dotted, all the T's were crossed before election day. Because simple issues of logistics, the issue in Warri at the end of the day was that the materials were there. But many of the INEC staff were waiting for their payment to move. That's why the fact that the distance they were to cover to get to the polling unit were not that far, at least in the urban center. But of course, people were also going to the riverine areas, which are part of Warri South local government, which became a local government of interest to the media and Nigerians generally, because for Warri, and of course, Steve Ayorinde, who was the anchor, was taunting me saying, well, it's like Warri wants to carry last, if any. And I said, no, last we'll go vote. And of course, they voted on Sunday. But the issue of INEC and logistics, perhaps in future election, I don't know what they have to do, because this is a recurring decimal. There is hardly any election you will not hear of INEC arriving late. Even in this Lagos, why should INEC officials arrive late in any location?
Well, it was
in a place like Lagos.
Yes.
Then also, INEC created new polling units to take away densely populated units. But we saw that in many parts before the election, INEC came out to say that as many polling units were not going to hold elections there because nobody agreed to move to those units. But you found that in a place like Lagos, we're having overcrowding in some units. So what happened? How did INEC distribute these new polling units to the extent that in some states, people said, we don't need a new unit? Clearly, because nobody wanted to go to those units. 280 polling units nationwide. Yet, you have congestion in a place like Lagos. So it means INEC did not do its homework properly in allocating those new polling units. You cannot use federal character to be distributing polling units. You leave a place like Lagos that is densely populated, the highest number of voters, and we saw that on election day. To the extent that in a polling unit that had over 1,250 voters, only 200 people cast their votes. And the rest went home without exercising their...
Two hard dog staff.
Two hard dog staff. So you...
Yes, in terms of looking at INEC. By the way, in Ekiti State, only 32% of voter turnout. So, and that had the lowest number of registered voters recorded, yet only 32 out of them came out to vote with the results we've seen.
32% of
32%, sorry, of the voters came out. So, but talking about INEC, and it's great, Mr. Feni, that you talk about the fact that the INEC chair had come out at several points, and the director, Festus Okoye, had come out to assure Nigerians that they were ready. Up until, like you mentioned, the day before elections, we had assurances. But what does readiness look like, or what does readiness mean for INEC? Is it that, like you mentioned, a cosmopolitan city like Lagos State, where naturally or ideally logistics should be as smooth or as easy as possible, with the assurances they gave us in terms of the arrangements they made, unfortunately it was abysmal. It was very poorly done. There was hardly a polling unit that the INEC staff arrived early. that was an issue. There were some polling units, like Dr. Bati had identified earlier, that they didn't arrive until after the designated time of voting had ended, 2:30. Then the INEC check came out to say that as long as you were on the queue before 2:30, you would still have, you would still be given the opportunity to vote, even if it is very late at night, which we saw in Magodo.
As long as it takes. That was his phrase. But that was not followed.
Yes, in Magodo, 4:28, about 3 a.m., they were still casting their ballots.
Yes.
Some INEC officials who came to the polling units refused to stay till that late, saying that they had to go, they had to leave, because these were NYSC students in some NYSC corpers in some instances who refused to stay beyond, and the people had to enforce the fact that they must vote. In fact, we heard chants of "we must vote," "we will vote" across the state. It shouldn't be like that. Like you mentioned in Warri South, they didn't exercise their franchise on Saturday. On Sunday, when they were supposed to, it didn't happen until afternoon.
Yes.
Between that time, they would have lost a number of people who would have just gotten tired and frustrated or had things to do and would have left the queue, who had been there since morning. Does readiness look like the fact that BVAS wasn't working in some parts of, or some of the people, some of the INEC officials arrived at the polling units without BVAS? This also happened in Warri South. There was a video that they shared with us where the people refused to vote and asked the INEC officials to go back and get BVAS to come back. These are the realities. So, and then not forgetting that INEC had a robust budget of 355 billion naira to execute this election.
It was approved.
It was approved. They confirmed that they'd gotten the president
all the
announced.
cash they needed.
They got it.
They got.
And they agreed with that. So what we must investigate, we must probe, we must understand what really went wrong with INEC, because we have to speak the truth. Unfortunately, they did not perform optimally. In fact, I'm not sure they performed average. Very big questions.
It's way below average, what INEC did. I mean, words of F fail me. If I can borrow somebody's word by saying this is F11, you're right. And the truth has to be told. A lot of people did come out to vote, but they couldn't vote. And that is just what is happening, pure and simple. Either they couldn't vote because of violence, but largely because of INEC performing below par. And I'll tell you, it has started to trickle down the numbers. I doubt when the projection comes out now, I don't think the voter numbers will be even up to that 35%.
Well,
and I'm going to tell you this. 2003 was the highest we had, over 63%, over 60%, I should say, voter turnout number. But I don't think it's going to be up to that 35% of last year. The first casualty is one of the 3 big states, the K states, what I call the KKK states. Some people call them the Kardashian states. Kaduna, Katsina, and Kano. In Katsina, that Atiku Abubakar won, he won with a margin of 489,000 thereabouts. Bola Tinubu with 408-something thousand. Both first and second, the entire vote is about less than 1 million. The last election cycle, the entire vote of winning was about 1.5, 1.6 million. So close to 500 or 600,000 people have been shaved away from the normal patterns we'll see in Katsina. Kano too is looking
like... Is this the real pattern?
Probably this is the real pattern, probably because of Vivas. Kano too might be looking like that. You also raised another point. Maybe it's not been the real pattern, it's also been the Vivas factor.